Taxi!
Where to, mate?
Hello, mate. 55 Tufton Street, please.
55 Tufton Street, SW1. Yep, I know it well. Hop in, sir. This is A Nation of Taxpayers, a weekly podcast from the Taxpayers Alliance.
Welcome back to the Taxpayers Alliance podcast studio. Rupert Lowe. Rupert, welcome.
Well, I'm delighted to be here again. How long ago was it since
I think it was a few months, wasn't it? Several months, because you were Reform when you first came in here. Now, of course, you're the independent MP for Great Yarmouth.
It's got to be more than 6 months, Duncan.
Yeah, I think it has been. Well, listen, good to have you in again. Thank you for finding the time. Will Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance joins us as well. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Duncan.
Our favourite angry young man. So we're looking forward to lots of robust opinions over the next half an hour or so. Let's start this podcast because we record this on a Tuesday, and we heard the news earlier that the former Conservative cabinet minister, right-hand man to Margaret Thatcher, Norman Tebbit, has died at the age of 94. I think we should spend a few moments talking about his legacy, Rupert, because he was one of the last proper Thatcherite Conservatives, I would say.
He was a very important part of Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, and he was a man who said things as he saw them, which I think we are sadly lacking today. And, you know, he was very, very good to his wife, who was blown up, as you know, by the IRA in the same bombing, which Margaret Thatcher narrowly avoided catastrophe in.
So the Grand Hotel in Brighton.
Grand Hotel in Brighton, indeed. So I can remember, you know, him being carried out on the stretcher. His wife was sadly very badly paralysed, but he cared for her until she died, which I think shows the sort of level of the man. And he cared deeply about Britain.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this generation of politicians now, who we call our leaders, I'm not sure they know what Britain is. I don't think they have the same software in them as Norman Tebbit had. So I think it's sad, but it is a seminal moment because it's sort of indicative of the passing of a generation, probably, who represented what I would describe as the last functional parliament.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, one thing I liked about Tebbit the most, I mean, I never knew the guy, and obviously being all but 25, I was born in 99, so a little before my time. But the one thing reading about him, how much of a sort of, you know, Thatcherite trench warrior he was, always going for it, you know, never caving in. He was a perfect example of like the upwardly mobile working class, lower middle class that sort of the Thatcher establishment represented. And he's sorely missed. And you mentioned, about him being like one of the last good MPs. He did actually once say that what he thought about modern MPs, and he said most of them are just sort of like pathetic daycare managers, basically, which I thought was an absolutely fantastic response. So yeah, got to be missed. And if anyone wants to look at a proper, backbench cabinet minister Tory, go look at Norman Tebbit. Great man.
He represented an Essex seat.
Yes, he did.
Whether he was a representative member of the Cat of Alorni, who used to inhabit Essex, who are very fine men, I'm not sure, but he was a very decent chap, and I think it's obviously very sad when somebody like that
I remember two
dies.
things about him. He was, as many politicians in the 1980s were, he had the mick taken out of him by Spitting Image.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Spitting Image?
Yes,
being
I am indeed.
Angry young man. And then they portrayed him as this thug, didn't they? This kind of skinhead with running around with a truncheon.
He loved that, though, by the way.
He loved it. He loved it. And the other thing I remember is off the back of the Brixton riots, which would have been, 84, 85?
I think Spitting Image, Duncan, would mean nowadays you'd end up with a non-crime hate incident.
You would.
Non-hate crime incident,
Wouldn't be allowed.
whatever garbage they call it.
It wouldn't be allowed. And I do remember off the back of the Brixton riots, he was very forthright, and there was this kind of narrative that developed, which we live under now, which is, we can't police too hard because it's all about community tensions. And Tebbit was just like, not having any of this. They broke the law, they rioted, they need to be punished, and we need more of that.
Sentiment.
We're talking about community tensions. I mean, it was the anniversary of 20th anniversary of 7/7, and again after that we had a lot of sort of pulling of hair and sucking of teeth from our establishment, but they haven't really done anything to address the root cause of that catastrophe, other than embrace mass, uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration of people who don't necessarily share the same culture, religion, or creed as us. So again, Norman Tebbit would never have supported that.
No.
And it's extraordinary that the British people, being so tolerant, have actually allowed this to happen over the last 20 years. and arguably, I think next time it could be worse.
I think, sadly, you're right. Let's talk about your first year as an MP. It's been, I think it's fair to say, a little bit rocky in places. We'll also talk about Restore Britain as well, because you launched that a few days ago. I've got to ask you this, because I follow you on X, as many people do who listen to our podcast here. I want to talk about your guns. Can I talk about your guns for a second?
Can.
Have you got your guns back?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm fighting to get them back.
Yeah.
And I did ask the minister, is there an agenda to take people's guns away? Because you find that people, even for totting up points on the road, people have had their guns taken away. Yeah. For drink driving, they have their guns taken away. It's almost as if there is an agenda to take people's legally held guns away from them. And I have asked the minister to make a statement in the House to confirm that that isn't the case, which she assures me it isn't. I'm not sure most of us believe her. And the police, the accusations against me were palpably false. I can assure you of that. Yeah. The extraordinary thing is the police don't seem to be interested in pursuing those people who made palpably false statements against somebody else, which I personally think in a civilized society they should be doing. They haven't shown me those statements, which again, I think if you're accused of something, you should see what you're accused of so you can respond to it. And they were pretty quick. 4 armed police came unannounced. Yeah. Having agreed I would hand them over to my brother, who's got the licenses. I had to check he had the storage. They then turned up mob-handed after I'd been at Cheltenham at 9:30 at night. 4 armed policemen in 3 cars. And they left at midnight. Look, I'm an elected MP. I've got a completely clean record. I've lived for 67 years without breaking a law. And I, at the end, I probably have broken laws, but I haven't been prosecuted for breaking law. We all break laws nowadays every day without knowing it. It's only if they want to do you some damage do they actually prosecute you for breaking the law. So the lawfare's got terribly bad, and we can talk about our judiciary and our police and the way in which I think people's conception historically of our justice system being great and our police being great. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I think we are deluding ourselves if we think that. But no, so they've still got them. I had an interview with the police called a suitability assessment.
Right.
About a month ago now.
Yeah.
And the first question they led with was, has the issue with reform affected your mental health? I said, most certainly not. Yeah. Have you been to see the doctor recently? Oh. No.
Right.
So talk about leading the witness. Anyway, I asked my secretary whether she thought it had affected me. She said, no, it's made you worse. So look, and I'm now waiting for the police to make a decision. If they decide they're not going to return them, I have 21 days to legally challenge that. The whole thing, frankly, Duncan, is a disgrace.
Well, let me explore it for a second.
It needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, it was why I asked you the question, because there are allegations made against you by the former chairman of Reform, and then, to use a bit of modern-day parlance, the fuzz turned up after your day at Cheltenham. 4 armed officers.
The Royal Box. I've been in the Royal Box with Princess Anne and Parker Bowles and Zara Phillips and various other people, and the next thing is we have the armed police turning up mob-handed unannounced.
So you didn't know they were coming?
No.
Right, understood.
They told me they tried to call me. I told them that was a barefaced lie because there was absolutely no missed call on my phone.
I've got to ask you this. Do you think you've been treated differently because you're Rupert Lowe?
Well, you did probably see that John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn, who, whilst I don't agree with their politics, at least they're honest in the way in which they present their views. And they had this issue. And the CPS told them that I think they said the hurdle for MPs is higher than it is for everybody else.
Right.
Now, that's rubbish. We're all equal under the law. There should be no 2-tier legal system. Whether you're an MP or not an MP, whoever you are, you should be equal under the law. And that goes for absolutely everybody who lives here. Yeah. So for the CPS to say that is farcical. Yeah. And it does need to be looked into because, the lad who runs the CPS, Mr. Parkinson, used to work at Kingsley Knapp. You take one look at him and you think, no. So look, this is a serious issue, and it's a serious issue of people's right to hold shotguns and firearms. I actually do need them because I have 865 acres.
You're a farmer.
I've planted 25 acres of trees, which we're told we should all do.
Yeah.
And I've got lots of deer which eat my trees. That's muntjac, that's roe and fallow. And they do need to be controlled. Otherwise, they destroy those trees and they will never grow properly. So, as well as rabbits and hares and other vermin which need shooting, pigeons, rooks brackling my barley, which they've been. I'm powerless to do anything about it now. So, no, look, it's completely wrong, but it is symptomatic, I think, of our freedoms slipping away.
Yeah.
And you've probably seen, they're trying to pass legislation to be able to dip into your bank account and other things like that. Now, when you've got a malign state like this with an HMRC, which I think you guys are pretty soft on them, actually. I personally think they are completely out of control.
I think we've ever been accused of being soft on HMRC.
I think you need to be a lot tougher.
All right, then that's a thing.
Because again, Mr. Harrer, who runs the Jim Harrer, I think he's called,
Jim Harrer,
who runs HMRC. I mean, they are a law unto themselves. They are a farce. They are actually now the enemy of the people.
Yeah.
They don't apply the same rules themselves that they apply to you and I.
No.
We aren't the problem. They are the problem.
Yeah.
And they've become extremely hawkish in the way in which they try and apply the 21,500 page tax manual, which, as you know, is open to innumerable interpretation.
Yes. Yep.
So look, I mean, this is all part of the statist agenda. And when they start to lose the argument, we have to worry, because then they do start to pass legislation like this. And it's very difficult to stop them when the state now accounts for such a large percentage of our GDP.
45% now, I think.
Yeah,
I
it's
believe.
around that, isn't it? It's around that. Let's just go back to what you've been through. It's interesting that the police turned up and said, "Has this affected your mental health, etc., etc." That's a symptom of where we are.
You said yes, you could claim a PIP.
Yeah.
Well, if I'd said yes, I wouldn't have got my guns back.
I mean, the dust has settled a little bit,
Which I still haven't, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
It has been a rocky 12 months. What have you taken away from what you've been through or what you've experienced?
Well, look, as you know, I've been fighting for our nation state for really since the Maastricht Treaty, which I actually read. I don't think most of the people who voted for it in Parliament ever read it. And indeed, Norman Lamont admitted he hadn't read it to me. But they still voted for it because that was the line they took. And the post-war plan, as you know, was to create a federal Europe, which we became part, but we had to allow enough time to elapse between the war, where obviously we weren't invaded. We were still, unlike most of Europe, we still had our own identity. But in order to get this European superstate together, they had to gradually undermine the British nation state, which they did by creating regions, by the way, as you know, and devolution, all part of Tony Blair's grand plan.
Master plan.
So I fought it, and then obviously, my career with the referendum party, Vote Leave, Business for Sterling, Brexit Party. So I've got a consistent track record of fighting for our nation state. So when I finally got into Parliament, the third attempt, I've kept my deposit at all three attempts, but this time I got in this fantastic constituency, Great Yarmouth. I had to go east to find the bedrock of Britain. And they're fantastic people. They've been badly let down by the post-war establishment. Our fishing rights have been given away. They've been basically overlooked, as have most of the coastal communities and most of the Red Bull seats. So I got into Parliament, and like anybody, I sort of pinched myself at the age of 66 to think, why am I sitting on these green benches? What have I done to deserve this? Well, I've done quite a lot to get there. Whether I deserved it or not, I wasn't sure. But I was privileged and honoured to be in Parliament representing my constituency as part of the 5 Reform MPs. So gradually I've become quite disillusioned with our Parliament. I think our Parliament has become, because of the hollowing out of the MPs, you don't have, can you imagine if you had 650 people like me in Parliament? You might actually get at the truth then, because people actually aren't frightened to say what they think. Yeah. Whereas we've got there are some good MPs, and I'm not denigrating everybody, but I think the Reds and the Blues, the post-war consensus politics has failed us. There's no doubt about that. And the MPs in Parliament, in my view, are now quite a weak gene pool. So it's gone really to the same or similar model to the EU, where actually, and if you listen to Dominic Cummings talking about this, he talks about, you know, the minutes of the cabinet meetings being sitting on the right hand of the Prime Minister before the meeting started. You know, the Home Secretary's got her script, the Foreign Secretary's got his script or her script. You've got the whole thing's pre-planned. Yeah. Now, that's not how British government should work. That's disgraceful. And Parliament's a bit the same. So you've got the ruling party, in this case Labour, have a tremendous power to shift the agenda around, to do what they want to do, to push through things like we were talking about earlier, this ridiculous football regulation that they're going to try and force through. It's a third reading this evening. It's probably not going to have much debate. They've decided they want it. They haven't learnt from the fact that over-regulation has destroyed our stock market, which was vibrant and extremely powerful in 1997 when Tony Blair came to power. Now it's a sclerotic, dying market with companies being taken over and most people being listed on NASDAQ rather than on the London Stock Exchange. So they won't learn. The Premier League is one of our most successful products. It gives us soft power. It generates huge revenue for the government. But Parliament's now become like the European model, where, as you probably know, the Commission, the European Commission, actually have more power than the elected MEPs. And that Parliament is controlled by, obviously, the Franco-German alliance at the moment. That needs to break. That needs to be broken up. And the voting's a joke. It goes through so quickly, it's almost subliminal. And if you blink, you miss it. So it's all done behind closed doors. The MPs, again, the MEPs, only have a negative pledge against legislation that they don't like. And our Parliament's become a bit like that. You know, it's the MPs are, if you like, in the shop window. They are what the public see. And I think the expenses scandal undermined the power of the MPs. Again, I think a lot of them were probably misled. The Parliamentary Commission on Standards is now more powerful, I think, than most MPs in Parliament. He certainly has a better office than most of us. If you come and have a look at my office and compare it with his, you'd be shocked. But under our Constitution, I mean, MPs should be gods. They should be elected by their constituents to represent them in Parliament, and they should be above all this nonsense. And when you see somebody like Dominic Raab being felled for, in inverted commas, bullying, and that's one of the things when Reform tried to assassinate me politically, I was accused of bullying. There was bullying in my office. It had nothing to do with me, and in fact, it's complete and utter drivel, as is their accusation that I had early onset dementia. And as were the various accusations made by Messrs. Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf and Lee Anderson. So, I mean, look, it's disappointing to me to see how it operates. And gradually, I've used the tools in answer to your question, Duncan, that I think as an independent MP I have at my disposal. Yeah. So, obviously, questions. I've asked lots of questions. I've done 10-minute rule bills, I've done adjournment debates, I've done early day motions, I've spoken in Westminster Hall, I've asked questions in the chamber, I've made speeches in the chamber, particularly about, you know, dumping of 300 tons of ammonium nitrate offshore my constituency with no consultation. In fact, they were told not to tell me. So when I found out, I got slightly irritated. You know, we're supposed to be looking after the planet, not tipping 300 tons of ammonium nitrate, better known to you and I as fertilizer, offshore my constituency, causing algal blooms and all sorts of eco damage to the shore 12 miles off Great Yarmouth. Not least the plastic bags wrapping themselves around ships' propellers, which ultimately they will probably one day do. So I think I've made as much of an impact as I can with the tools I've got at my disposal. But I can tell you, as an independent MP, in order to speak in the House, very often I have to sit on those green benches for up to 3 hours, because as an independent MP, you're treated as a grunt. And you get less standing than... And I have nothing against Lindsay Hoyle. He's a very decent man. He is a Labour MP, as I remind people. So he has to slightly behave himself, or he'll lose his huge office and his chauffeur-driven cars and
overseas trips,
in Parliament, and whatever other perks he gets. But he's a decent guy, and so I don't think people should be beguiled by what they see. It's a bit of a charade. The power lies with the unelected civil service, with the permanent secretaries.
Yeah.
And I defy you to name me one permanent secretary.
I can probably
but you get my point.
Yeah, I get it.
They're not elected.
Yeah.
But also we're in Westminster.
The power lies with them. And when you hear what Dominic Cummings said, that confirms it.
Well, one of the pieces of policy I've always thought that should be implemented, it's not a really, very sexy piece of policy per se, but ministers should have the right to fire and hire permanent private secretaries. Like, end of story.
Correct.
Right? And that's not a very cool or interesting policy that you can run an election on, but it's one that would ultimately solve the problem that Rupert, was just alluding to. But are any politicians going to do that?
Holding to account stop and bullying start?
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, what are people? People are supposed to do their job, aren't they?
Yeah.
But we live in a society where, oh God, it might have upset them.
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, frankly, sod off.
Listen, before we get into Restore Britain, just a couple of more questions around where you've been in terms of the last 12 months and your move on from Reform to sitting as an independent MP. Was there anyone in Reform that you actually considered to be a mate in terms of MPs, fellow MPs at the time?
Well, look, when I first went in when I think on the first day there were only 4 of us there.
Yeah.
So James hadn't actually been elected.
No.
I think he won
Recount
by
after recount,
90 seats after several recounts.
Yeah.
So, and James he's got some issues now. I mean, whether that's another political assassination, whether they've got somebody earmarked to take his seat in a by-election, who knows? Only Machiavelli knows. But at the end of the day, James, he's a decent chap. He's obviously got some historical issues which he's paid the price for and served the punishment for. And I always say, once people have been punished and served their time or whatever it is, they should be rehabilitated. That is, in my view, a key aspect of our society, and you shouldn't hold that against people forever. So, I mean, James, I think, has the right ambitions and instincts. The others, I don't really know Sarah Pochin, who's now a Reform MP. Lee Anderson, I made it my business to get on with Lee. He did something which I would never have done to me. I won't forgive him for that. And, it's not the way people should behave towards each other. He was technically our chief whip. And then, obviously, Farage and Tice, I'd known both of them for some time. Nigel's very mercurial. I don't know if he knows himself that well, but so it's quite hard for other people to get to know him. I'm not quite sure what motivates him. I know he wants to be rich. I know that. Then Richard. Well, Richard is Richard's Richard. He's got. I don't get on too well with Isabel Oakeshott, who's always poking some rudery at me. She now resides in Dubai, but I appeared on Talk TV last night on Kevin O'Sullivan. She was there just before me, talking, I guess, from Dubai. So look, I mean, I just got on with it. I think I did my bit. They accused me of not being a team player. I don't agree with that. I think I did my bit to get my head down and drive Reform support, and I would have helped Nigel become Prime Minister. I mean, I thought we shared the same objectives, but when I realised we were going to win the election, and I said to him, right, where's the plan? We've got to have a plan, because we can't win the election and then let the people down. I don't want to be part of that. So there were two parts to it. Winning was the key, and then delivering is also a big part of it. And you can't deliver if you haven't got a shadow cabinet, you haven't got policies, you haven't got a plan, and you haven't got a structure.
But
we had none of that.
No, but moving away from the politics for a second, I just got the sense when it played out on Twitter/X, when you left Reform, and we saw these messages flying around, moving away from the politics. I just wondered from the personal side of things, I got the sense that you, and maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but some of the messages that you were posting and some of the stuff that other people were posting, but chiefly you, because you're here in the studio, you felt let down on a personal level. And you've been in business, you worked in football, right? Do you have mates in politics? Is it possible to have mates in politics? Is it possible to have mates in business?
No, I do have mates in politics.
Yeah.
I'm on record as saying there are some extremely good young Tory MPs who I get on very well with. I think they're genuine Tories. Yeah. The problem they've got is they've got this, I promised not to call them Lib Dem Tories, but so I'm not calling them Lib Dem Tories, but they've got this overhang of the Cameronite selection process, which means they've got people who arguably aren't Tory. Yeah. They're not even probably conservative with a small c. So they're not bad people, but that's just, they're not in my view, doing what they should be doing if they're elected to represent a Conservative Party. And with an 80-seat majority, you tell me something that they did that they should be proud of. I can't think of anything. No. And they could have repealed all of the malign Tony Blair Brownite legislation, which is the root cause of most of our trouble. Yeah. But they chose to do nothing.
No,
and now they blame COVID. Well, their response to COVID was an absolute catastrophe. Yeah. Anders Tegnell showed us what should have been done. We should have tried to preserve our freedoms and our economy, and at the same time done our best to ensure that those who were vulnerable chose to isolate themselves, and the young who weren't affected by this wretched disease were able to continue to interface and contribute.
Took 2 years of my life away from me.
But what did we do? We forced an experimental jab on everybody. I'm pleased to say I didn't have it, and I wouldn't touch it. I'm afraid I don't after the post office scandal and after infected blood scandal, and it goes all the way back to virtually every catastrophe is government inspired, which is why I believe in the individual. I don't believe in the state. Statism doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So on a personal level, you don't feel let down by anyone in reform who you thought, I like this guy, we get on, he's a mate. That's what I just want to get clear on that, because I'm interested in the dynamic.
I think we weren't in it to be mates.
No.
We were in it to change the way we're governed,
Understood,
thought.
Yeah.
I have my own life, and I've got a lot of very close friends.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say I haven't made new friends.
Sure.
I mean, as you know, it's difficult to teach old dogs new tricks, equally, old dogs make friends less easily than young dogs.
It's very true.
But I have made friends in Parliament, and I do think there are some good people in Parliament. Yeah. There are probably some very good people in the civil service, but and there are in the BBC, but I don't, as you know, I defund the BBC tomorrow, but I think if you look lower down the ranks, you probably find some good people. The problem with all of our organs of the state is the leadership.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that goes for the police, that goes for the civil service.
It's a common denominator,
It's a common denominator.
Yeah.
They are a bunch of people who don't, I think, share the same aspirations or the same belief in the nation state as what I call the hardcore, decent people of Middle England.
Okay. When are you going to join the Conservative Party, Rupert?
Well, as you know, Duncan, I've set up Restore Britain, which is, one journalist has had to phone me 3 times to get this through his head. He asked me if I'm standing. Yes. I'm now sitting in Parliament as a Restore Britain MP. I go no.
No.
Because Restore Britain is
not
a movement.
It's not a political party. Yeah.
And, people find it difficult to understand, but I think they are beginning to understand. And I got up early to play tennis at Queen's today, and I was delighted when the gateman who I saw, he said he just literally this morning signed up for Restore Britain. So I said, well, we must be making some impact.
But listen, you're an effective parliamentarian.
But I'm answering your question. So Restore Britain is a movement, and it's a movement for a very good reason. What we don't need in this country is another party which creates division. What we need is unity. And we need unity of purpose from those people who want the same as I want, which is I want my country back. I want sensible government back. I want the interests of the British people put at the top of the agenda. I don't want mass illegal immigration. I want to deport those people who come here illegally, who are living here illegally, who are in our prisons, who've committed crimes here. And I want to put the honest, decent British taxpayer at the top of the agenda where they should be. And that's not what our leaders are doing.
No, they're not. Let me just hone in on this point a little bit more, and then we'll go through some of the policy proposals for Restore Britain. You're an effective parliamentarian. You made the point earlier, as an independent MP now, you have to sit on those benches for hours at a time because you're considered a grunt. That was the word you used. Okay.
Even though I'm 67, I've got quite a lot of experience, I'm a grunt.
But that's the system.
In the eyes of Parliament, I'm a grunt.
You're a grunt. But if you join the Conservatives, you wouldn't be a grunt, would you? And you could be, dare I suggest, with respect, a lot even more effective as an MP. So where are you with the Conservatives?
I don't think that's right.
No?
I think, and going back to Restore, and it goes to Restore. I could join the Tories tomorrow. I'm pretty sure they'd like me to join them. But if you joined them, you'd be a bit like, you'd be getting into the spider's web, and you'd very quickly find you couldn't move, and you'd be in a cocoon. And
so is that why
you'd have to do what you were told and take a whip.
Is that the reason why you would not join them?
But I'm the whole point about Restore, Duncan, which even you don't quite get yet. I'm just trying to explain it.
Well, we haven't got on to Restore.
It doesn't mean I won't become part of the Tory party, but I can't be part of the Tory party as it is currently structured.
Okay, well that you've answered the question. Yeah.
So when we set up Restore a week ago, I was amazed we didn't get 17.4 million people who voted to leave the European Union signing up immediately. If they're true to their word, they want their nation back, they should sign up tomorrow. And then we'd have real power to be able to influence the way in which government works, because they're all tarts. They all want votes, and they all believe in, as you know, we've been run by polling for the last few years. So sign up for Restore Britain, give us the power, and we can then influence. Because I don't think we've got... Firstly, I don't think an election will be in 4 years. I think our economy is teetering on the edge. And a good economy is what underlines or underscores a sound democracy.
Absolutely everything.
And if the economy implodes, which I think, with what Labour are doing... they don't seem to understand that, if you kill the private sector, it doesn't come back very quickly.
No.
And therefore, you get further and further down the statist route. And we know that fails. And what will happen is people will lose their freedom more and more. Because the only way that a state can function is to deprive the individual of his or her freedom.
Yeah.
And you can see it happening every day in every walk of life. COVID was about control. State control, that's purely what it was about. And they were amazed that we didn't kick back more. They were amazed that we just sat there and accepted it. So, people have got to get a bit of backbone now. If they don't want to lose their country, they need to sit up pretty damn quick. So, and I don't think we've got 4 years to watch this happening, this cancer permeating our entire system. We've got to start to try and change it now. We've got to start and influence it now. And the more people who sign up for Restore Britain, the more influence we've got now to try and stop this nonsense happening. Stop the football regulators. Stop the rubbish that's being pursued by people who've got no real life experience. I mean, our front bench is a farce. It's a farce. And I'm amazed that people can't see it. How many of them have got business experience? I can tell you.
Zero.
Three of them claim it, but it's pretty irrelevant business experience.
It's like watching a bad episode of The Apprentice, isn't it? You just look at it and you just go, what is this? Is this the best we can do? We were talking earlier, Will, before we turned the microphones on, about Restore Britain and also Advance UK, Ben Habib's project. And you made the observation to me, and I think we should explore it, Rupert, totally. The idea that it can be confusing for some people. Now, you've done the pitch brilliantly for Restore Britain. You're not here to talk about Advance UK, but your man and woman in the street, I think, if they're right of centre politically, and that only, I'll make that comment on the basis that if you still believe in the left and the right, it's a bit muddled, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit, obviously because I'm politically engaged, I can demarcate all the differences and understand what the differences are, but the average man and woman on the street isn't particularly clued in the way that I am. I think the one question I probably have about Restore Britain, while I appreciate it, James, and get what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it's not a political party, because you're completely right, we don't need more political parties in this country.
We want unity of purpose.
Because that's been tried by so many people in the past, Heritage, Reclaim, Advance UK now, and, they, even the SDP, they've been around for a little while. And
they've
really
got some good policies,
and I'm sure they do. But the thing I have is what do you expect sort of Restore Britain to achieve? What's the end goal? And also, are you guys going to build a policy platform to pressure individual parliamentarians or parties?
Well, first of all,
how radical is it going to be?
Let me answer that. So first of all, what the reason people aren't necessarily fully engaged and they don't watch this all the time is because they're working so hard just to make ends meet and pay these vast taxes which fund a bloated, ineffective state. So when people understand that, then they can start to understand what we're trying to achieve, because we want to liberate them from that. Now, Advance UK, that's Ben. Ben is a good man. I get on very well with Ben. And we talk to each other, but he wanted a party. I didn't want a party, I wanted a movement. And the reason I wanted a movement is because a party is divisive, a movement is unifying. So I think we want unity of purpose now, and we don't need another party with somebody sort of coming in with ego and another administration and another load of fundraising and that sort of stuff. What we want is unity. So I'm trying to unify people.
Sure.
My final objective is to change the way we govern at the next election.
Okay.
We have to win the next election collectively. If we don't win the next election collectively, my advice to people will be go and join those people who've left. Because I actually, and I say that to a lot of young people who I know care deeply about their country, and our biggest support base are the Gen Zs. They
people like
want
me.
their country back. They're good people. But the conditions for that aren't going to be delivered by the existing status quo in Parliament or in the civil service.
No, that's true. I suppose the other point I would make, though, is that when I completely agree with the Gen Z point, and maybe I'll inject some of my angry young man Gen Z energy.
So you said, where does the movement go?
Yeah, where does it go?
So if the movement gets big enough, right, the movement will get more powerful as more people sign up.
Right.
So I urge everybody to sign up. I've spent a lot of my own money to get where we are. I'm not in this for money.
No,
as people know, I give my salary to charity.
Yeah, of course.
Mainly in Great Yarmouth, but I've also given some to other charities if I think they're doing something which I agree with. So I'm not in it for money, but I think we need some ammunition in terms of finance, and we need numbers of people. And the more people we get, the more power we get. The more power we get to call, like we set up the Lucy Connolly petition. I mean, Lucy Connolly should not be in prison.
No, of course not.
No.
It's ridiculous. She was badly advised legally. Probably, I think she was on legal aid. As I say, our legal system is not what it used to be. So I think that gives us power. And if it grows and grows like a snowball going down the hill, what will then happen is, I think it'll be one of four things. So we either take over the Tory party because they need an infusion of new blood, but if they don't see that, that's not going to happen. They'll continue to shuffle the pack on the deck of the Titanic and they'll go down. But that's for them to decide. That's not for me to decide. Yeah. But they are powerful, if they're restructured and they have proper leadership, they, I believe, are the best vehicle through which we can restore Britain. But the penny's got to drop with them. Equally, we could take over reform. Do I think that will happen? Probably not, but it's in theory a possibility. Or we could set up our own party. Huge job. And I think setting up a new party, as we see with reform, they have terrible trouble holding on to 5 MPs, let alone running a government. And if you look at what's happened with the local councils who've been elected, I mean, I think we've now got an 18-year-old running Warwickshire County Council with a £400 million budget. That in itself is a joke. So he may be a very able young man, but at 18, you don't know which way is up, and that's a fact. So the next thing that could happen is if we do see, I don't know, change within the Tory party or change within another party that we think has a chance of delivering the change that we agree with, we could align ourselves with another party. This is the great thing about a movement. We don't need, we keep all our options open, and ultimately we do whatever our collective group thinks is in the best interest of the country. And we're going to set up a direct democracy app, which we think we've identified. We're doing that. We've told people we're setting that up. We want our members to input their views. They're not going to agree with every policy that we put forward, and you've probably seen we're putting forward what we call draft policy suggestions each day, and we're going to continue to do that.
Restore the death penalty, ban the burqa.
Absolutely. Detain, deport.
It's all there.
There's nothing we haven't said on my X account. And by the way, I have a great team of people, a very small team, but they're fantastic, and we all share the same vision. And in many ways, the most difficult thing we're going to have, I think, is to find other people who are totally trustworthy, who share the same vision as us. So you probably see Charlie Downs has joined us.
Yes,
He's doing
Charlie,
a fantastic job. We've got Maria Botwell up in Yorkshire. I spoke to her yesterday. She's doing a fantastic job. So we've got some extremely good people who I think share the same altruistic vision as us to restore Britain and to have, because Britain, when it's functioning, is the best country in the world to live, but it's not functioning.
No.
So when I sat down, I thought, how do I change this? I mean, I've tried in Parliament, and I think we've shifted the Overton window on the rape gangs. We've shifted the Overton window on detain and deport. We've shifted the Overton window, arguably, on Lucy Connolly. But can we actually make the difference we need to make as quickly as we need to make it as a lone MP in Parliament? Probably not. So what we need now is for the people who share our view, they need to sign up in big numbers, and they've got to show that they want their country. As I said in the introduction, your country, your responsibility. You can't just bury yourself in, and I know it's difficult because, as I say, the government is oppressing everybody. They're bullying people. They are stealing from them. They are basically making it difficult for them to support their families, to go on holiday. They're not doing what a government should be doing. They're not serving the people.
No.
So ultimately, what we need people for the penny to drop with the people. And once that drops, trust me, this can change very quickly. But it's only going to change if people support what we're doing. Now, they may not. It may fizzle out. And, if it fizzles out, I fear for all of us, but it may. And if it does, I accept that. If people are happy with the status quo and they're happy with the way they're governed and they're happy for Angela Rayner to keep ladling on workers' rights costs on companies that are already overtaxed and overregulated, and Rachel Reeves to keep pouring more and more taxes onto the productive sector to pay it to the idle, indolent public sector, which, as we all know, is failing. We see it every day, all of us. All of us see our great country slipping through our fingers every day. We can see it. You can feel it.
Yeah, of course you can.
Can't you?
Yeah, of course you can.
I need to ask you a question on behalf of any comms people listening, because they was it intentional to launch Restore Britain on the same day as Advance UK? Did you know Advance UK were going to launch on the same day that you launched?
No, I didn't. And people said we should hold ours. I said no. We had our plan. We carry on with our plan. I've learnt in life, you don't let anything derail you. And I work with some great people. They know. I mean, again, now and again, I do have to change my. Having agreed to do something, I might have to change it for various reasons. But I don't like doing it because I'm quite Protestant in my view. Your diary is what you've agreed to do, and you do it.
Yeah.
If you live your life like that, you, on the whole, feel much better about things. So I didn't know Ben was going to launch on Monday morning. I didn't know he'd called his party Advance UK. And without being rude to him, it sounds more like a tube of toothpaste to me. But I would never have called mine Advance UK. It was the Integrity Party, as you know. That was his original name. I think he took over the Integrity Party. But I haven't fallen out with Ben. I like Ben very much. He's joined Restore Britain. I think he supports a lot of the policy that we're putting forward. He wants his country back, and he's clever. He speaks extremely well, and I think he's got the right instincts. But he wanted a party. I didn't want a party. That was the intellectual difference between us. It doesn't mean we won't come together at some time in the future. I hope in many ways we do. But I had a clear vision of what I thought we needed to do, and I wanted to unify. I don't want to divide further.
Yeah.
We've got enough division. Enough parties. We just haven't got the right people leading them.
So before we round up, I'd just like to get into detail on sort of a specific policy issue, if you don't mind, specifically welfare. So one thing I've noticed, I'm sure you've seen in Parliament over the last week, this complete and utter farce with the Labour government basically passing a welfare bill, which was originally going to say £5 billion, which, by the way, is measly. Like, health and disability benefits are going to cost over £100 billion by the end of this decade. That's an insane amount of money, and £5 billion is not going to touch the sides. They've given so many concessions to their backbenchers now that the bill's actually going to spend an extra 100 to 400 million than it was originally going to. Are you concerned that, and especially this is more of a young people ask as well, are you concerned that maybe there are many on the right who are not interested or willing for this welfare discussion regarding actually just the size of it, but also not willing to discuss the triple lock on pensions, for example, which, as the OBR revealed today, is now costing triple what it was just costing a few years ago. I think it's the price of it every single year has gone up to £15.3 billion or something crazy like that. Do you see Restore Britain having a very robust lower, as you seem to be instinctually, lower taxes, lower state. Do you see yourselves having a robust policy on welfare? Because with reforming the Tories, they caved on winter fuel benefits. They're still committed to triple lock on pensions. Reform's now pro the 2-child benefit cap. And I'm sitting here thinking, what about fiscal discipline? What about economic responsibility?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, let me say the Labour Party are a farce.
Yeah.
I mean, they have U-turned on virtually everything, including the statutory inquiry on the rape gangs. Just about everything. I mean, this is a party, I call it a landslip election victory. I mean, they ended up with a huge majority on a very, very small percentage of the vote. So they're not as secure as they might have thought at first sight. Now, on welfare, I'm very clear on welfare. So ultimately, and we've got lots of issues of welfare. As you say, I mean, we've got 9 million people of working age not working. Yeah. We've got this mental health issue. And a sensible, decent society must support those people who genuinely need supporting. And the Victorians did it, as we know, through the friendly societies, and they did it voluntarily. So I actually think the individual, and if you look at very rich people, they give their money away. The state never gives its money away. It takes it and enriches civil servants and public sector employees. Individuals who make lots of money give it away, usually because they want people to think well of them. The state doesn't have a conscience or doesn't care. And very often the people who work for the state are pork barreling their existence on the back of the productive part of the country. Yeah. So first of all, we must have a system that protects those people who genuinely need welfare. I think it's out of control now. And a lot of that was caused by COVID. So we ended up with a lot of young people with mental health issues now able to sign themselves off. And they're not making a contribution, they're actually costing the taxpayer money. Immigration, a lot of the people who come here, and I'm quite pleased that we're actually going to be able to see, thanks to our questions, a breakdown of those people by religion and nationality, those people claiming universal credit. So welfareism has to be reversed.
Yes.
A society that is successful does not rely on welfare. It relies on people who basically contribute, people who are self-reliant, people who are self-respecting, and people who basically imbue in their families a kind of ethic which is to contribute, not to take. Yeah. Now, we know we're over the target and we've been going on about this for about 3 years, about Moatability is another example of vastly bloated welfare being distributed by an entirely deficient DWP. And the man running my office in Great Yarmouth, John Whedon, who's a fantastic chap, spent 22 years working at the DWP. And the reason he left the DWP is he got so bored of handing out money without any proper checks. And this is the issue. Now, I haven't quite worked out whether this is all part of a design, and the fact that we've outsourced a lot of our engineering skills and a lot of our productivity skills to nations that are emerging because the labour is cheaper there, and we've now got a big issue ourselves, and we therefore have to create some form of employment through the state, civil servants, quangos, local government, whether we have to sort of replace productive capacity that we've lost by fooling ourselves and probably lying about the size of our deficits. I don't know. And we have this accounting system called Oscar 2. Do I trust it? No. Do I know enough about it? No. Do I intend to learn more about it? Yes. But at the end of the day, I think welfareism is a cancer. We can't have it unless it's absolutely necessary. There should be a safety net for those people who need it. But those people who choose to be indolent and not to contribute don't deserve to be paid anything.
No, exactly.
I'm sorry. That's why I
You don't need to apologise for anything.
Nobody's ever given me 1 penny. No. Yeah. For nothing. And I think I paid vast amounts of tax in my life. And people go, well, your companies took furlough, or they took we paid the last bit of furlough back, by the way. Yeah. We only had to take furlough because the government misguidedly shut the country down.
Yeah, exactly that.
And then chuck money around like confetti through bounce back loans that they're never going to get back.
We always hear the phrase, it's supposed to be a safety net. It stopped being a safety net decades ago, and it's become a hammock for many people. That's how I view it. Listen, we're going to wrap this up. Rupert, thank you for coming in. I think you've explained brilliantly about Restore Britain. The website is restorebritain.org.uk. People can go there, find out more about it.
There are some plagiarisms that go through to the Reform website, so you must get the right right one. So it's .org.uk.
restorebritain.org.uk is
That's
the official
and that'll
web
go
address.
to our website.
That'll go to your website. So just in a if you had to make a 10-second pitch to our listeners as to why people should sign up today, what would you say?
I think those people who care about the country they live in, they must sign up to Restore Britain if they want their country back. And if they do, we will do our very best to deliver it for them. If they don't, then I respect that, and I will go off and sip some pina coladas by my swimming pool if we don't win the next election.
You're not a cocktail man, are you?
No. Glass of red wine.
Exactly that. Listen, Rupert, thank you for coming in. It's been a pleasure as always. Will Yarwood from the TPA, thank you as well. Thank you for listening. You find A Nation of Taxpayers, this podcast by the Taxpayers Alliance. You find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. Please spread the word. And if you want to send us an email, maybe suggest a future guest, the email address is podcast@taxpayersalliance.com.